Once upon a time, in a quaint little town where everyone knew everyone else, there was a bakery that sat on the corner of Elm Street and Maple Avenue. It was a charming place, with the aroma of freshly baked bread, pastries, and cakes wafting through the air every morning. The owner, Mr. Thompson, was a kind-hearted man in his early 50s, known for his generosity and exceptional baking skills. Mr. Thompson's bakery was a haven for the townsfolk. People would line up before dawn just to get their hands on his famous sourdough, and children would press their noses against the glass display, eyes wide with wonder at the colorful array of treats. His daily routine was as predictable as the sunrise. Wake up at 4 a.m., knead the dough, bake the bread, and open the doors to a rush of eager customers. One particularly chilly autumn morning, as Mr. Thompson was setting out the day's first batch of bread, he noticed a small boy lingering near the entrance. The boy, no older than 10, had messy hair, dirt-smudged cheeks, and eyes that spoke of hunger and desperation. Mr. Thompson had seen him before, skulking around the alley, but the boy had never come inside. The bakery's bell tinkled softly as customers came and went, but the boy remained outside, his gaze fixed on the steaming loaves. Mr. Thompson, curious and concerned, decided to approach him. "Hey there, young man," he called out gently. "Would you like to come inside and warm up?" The boy hesitated, his wide eyes darting from Mr. Thompson to the inviting warmth of the bakery and back again. Finally, he shook his head and turned to leave. Mr. Thompson sighed, feeling a pang of sympathy. He returned to his work, keeping one eye on the boy. As the baker turned his back to retrieve a fresh tray of croissants, he heard a soft rustle. When he looked back, a loaf of bread was missing, and the boy was nowhere to be seen. Mr. Thompson sighed again, more heavily this time. He could understand hunger, especially in a town where not everyone was as fortunate. But stealing was still stealing. He made a mental note to keep an eye out for the boy. That night, as he closed up the shop, Mr. Thompson couldn't shake the image of the boy's haunted eyes. He wondered what circumstances could drive a child to such desperation. Determined to help, he spoke with some of his regular customers the next day, discreetly asking if they knew anything about the boy. A few days later, Mrs. Jenkins, a longtime customer and town gossip, provided some answers. "Oh, that's little Danny Harper," she said. "His family's been having a rough time. His father lost his job at the factory, and his mother passed away a few years back. It's just him, his father, and his little sister now. Poor things, they're barely scraping by." Mr. Thompson felt a lump form in his throat. The thought of a young boy stealing bread to feed his family weighed heavily on his mind. He resolved to find a way to help without embarrassing or shaming the boy. Over the next few weeks, Mr. Thompson discreetly left small bags of bread and pastries in the alley where he had seen Danny. He hoped the boy would find them and take what he needed. Each morning, the bags were gone, and Mr. Thompson felt a small measure of relief. Years passed, and the memory of the hungry child faded into the background of Mr. Thompson's busy life. The bakery continued to thrive, and he never mentioned the incident to anyone. New faces came and went, but the steady stream of loyal customers remained, keeping Mr. Thompson's days filled with the comforting rhythm of dough and warmth. One day, a decade later, the doorbell of the bakery chimed, announcing a new customer. Mr. Thompson looked up from the counter and saw a young man, tall and lean, with a familiar glint in his eyes. The man approached with a hesitant smile. "Good morning," the young man greeted. "Do you remember me?" Mr. Thompson squinted, trying to place the face that seemed so familiar yet distant. Suddenly, it clicked. The messy hair, the dirt-smudged cheeks. But now, the boy was grown, clean-shaven, and dressed in neat, albeit worn, clothes. "You," Mr. Thompson stammered. "You're the boy who stole the bread." The young man nodded, his eyes downcast. My name is Daniel. I wanted to apologize and explain myself, if you'll let me. Mr. Thompson leaned against the counter, curiosity piqued. Go on. Daniel took a deep breath. Back then, my family was struggling. My father had lost his job, and we were barely getting by. My little sister was sick, and we couldn't afford food, let alone medicine. That day, I stole the bread because we were starving. I knew it was wrong, but I didn't see any other way. Mr. Thompson listened intently, his heart softening with each word. He had always wondered what became of the boy and why he had resorted to theft. Daniel continued, things eventually got better. My father found work again and we managed to pull through. I got a job, saved up, and went to college. Now I'm back in town, working as a teacher, but I never forgot what I did. I felt guilty, and I wanted to make it right. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small envelope. This is for the bread I stole, Daniel said, handing it to Mr. Thompson. It's not much, but it's all I can offer. Mr. Thompson took the envelope, feeling its weight in his hand. He looked at Daniel, seeing not a thief, but a man who had overcome adversity and grown into someone honorable. With a smile, he handed the envelope back. Keep it, Mr. Thompson said. Consider the bread a gift. You needed it more than I did back then. And it sounds like you've more than made up for it by turning your life around. Daniel's eyes filled with gratitude. Thank you, Mr. Thompson. That means more to me than you know. As Daniel left the bakery, Mr. Thompson watched him go with a sense of satisfaction. Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness, even if they come from understanding a desperate act, can make the biggest difference in someone's life. And as for the bread, it had long since become just a memory, one that now held a much deeper meaning. After that day, Daniel became a regular visitor at the bakery. He would stop by on his way to the school where he taught, often bringing along his students to introduce them to the man who had shown him such kindness. Mr. Thompson enjoyed these visits, finding himself invigorated by the youthful energy and the stories Daniel shared about his students. One sunny afternoon, Daniel brought a special guest with him, his little sister, Emily, who was now a healthy and vibrant young woman. She greeted Mr. Thompson with a warm smile and a bouquet of flowers. I've heard so much about you, Emily said. Thank you for helping my brother when we needed it most. Mr. Thompson felt a surge of pride and humility. It was the least I could do, he replied. I'm just glad to see you both doing so well. As the years went by, Mr. Thompson and Daniel's friendship deepened. They often reminisced about that fateful day, reflecting on how a single loaf of bread had set off a chain of events that changed both their lives. Daniel's students, inspired by his story, often volunteered at the bakery, learning the art of baking and the importance of community. One evening, as the sun set over the town, Mr. Thompson and Daniel sat on a bench outside the bakery, enjoying a moment of quiet reflection. You know, Mr. Thompson said, that day you stole the bread, it wasn't just about the bread. It was about survival, resilience, and ultimately redemption. Daniel nodded, his eyes fixed on the horizon. And it taught me that there's always hope, even in the darkest times. It's a lesson I try to pass on to my students every day. Mr. Thompson smiled, feeling a sense of fulfillment that went beyond the success of his bakery. He had made a difference in someone's life, and in turn, that person was making a difference in the lives of many others. As the stars began to twinkle in the evening sky, Mr. Thompson realized that his bakery had become more than just a place to buy bread. It was a symbol of compassion, hope, and the power of human connection. And as long as he had flour, yeast, and an oven, he would continue to bake, to give, and to make the world a little bit brighter, one loaf at a time. Thank you so much for watching this video. I put a link down below about something very interesting you'll like. Go check that out. Subscribe for more. See you on the next video.